So, part three of my talk on why I think the US will remain a global hyperpower, which is more than just a superpower. It's basically the sole power with the ability to exert influence everywhere it wants to, nearly simultaneously. This one's going to be focused on energy. I think it's part three. So, really, the US has seen an incredible stroke of luck when it comes to energy. It was, for all intents and purposes, looking like it was going to be the largest importer of energy on the planet because the standard methods of extracting oil were running out in the US. So we were relying on the Middle East heavily, which is why we had such an influence in the Middle East. But now, thanks to the shale fields and our broader geographic diversity and the ingenious companies and scientists that figured out alternatives, the U.S. is now the largest energy exporter when it comes to oil and natural gas. This is largely due to fracking and the shale fields and horizontal drilling and things that were not technologies in the last century, but now have rocketed the U.S. up the chain to be able to provide energy not only for itself, but the world at large. But even though it is the largest exporter, it doesn't need to be. We don't necessarily rely on that money. We do it because we like the money and we like to become more rich, and with more wealth comes more power, obviously. But this is something that is not necessary. Interestingly, it is necessary for China. They're the largest global importer of energy. And this is how the United States would defeat China relatively quickly if there was a war. Now, remember how I talked in part two, how the U.S. is a global military power with an expeditionary navy that can fight simultaneously in two locations around the world. This is exactly what the U.S. would use. In a scenario where a war breaks out and China is the largest importer of oil in the world, most of that oil comes from the Middle East. The U.S. doesn't have to take out China in Chinese waters. They can beat China in the Persian Gulf, in the Arabian Sea, in the Red Sea, and in the Indian Ocean. China does not have an expeditionary navy. The U.S. merely needs to stop oil shipments in those aforementioned bodies of water, and China dies a pretty rapid energy death. According to the UN Comtrade, 80% of Chinese oil comes from places that are not Russia. 20% of it comes from Russia, which ostensibly probably would continue to be flowing during a war because of their alliances, but those pipelines could be fairly easy targets for the U.S. as well. But 80% of their oil comes from the Middle East in some form or another, whether it's Saudi Arabia, Iran, Iraq, other countries in that area. So meanwhile, the U.S. doesn't do that. They don't need the Middle East. You can't blockade energy from the United States because most of the energy that the United States would need would come internally. According to the American Oil and Gas Reporter reserve estimates, the U.S. has the most recoverable oil in the world at 264 million barrels. Now, I say recoverable. This isn't just standard oil reserves. It doesn't do anybody any good to have oil reserves and then not be able to get it. So recoverable oil reserves, the U.S. has the most. If the U.S. internalized and didn't take oil from anywhere else, we could last 27 years. If you add in Canada and Mexico as this sort of NAFTA, North American Free Trade aligned energy, the three of us could last 54 years together on our own oil. The funny thing is the U.S. doesn't internalize. We buy other countries' oil on purpose. We import 9 million barrels of oil per day because, one, it can be cheaper, and two, it saves our own reserves. But again, we don't have to do that. We can use our own oil. And I'm just talking about oil here. When you switch over to natural gas, the U.S. has so much natural gas that it has to flare it, meaning we just burn it because we don't have anywhere else to put it. We don't have the storage. We don't have any way of getting rid of it. So we're trying to retool our systems to run on natural gas, specifically power and other areas as well, including chemicals and plastics and things like that. That way, we can use this natural gas, basically fortune we're sitting on top of. Because of that, the U.S. will have one of the cheapest energy costs in the world. While unfortunately places like Europe struggle with really high energy costs, the US maintains a relatively low cost for energy use, which makes it very enticing for businesses to come here to the US to invest and to build their companies, whereas Europe won't necessarily have that as much. Same with China. China's energy costs are going up as well. According to the Energy Information Administration, NAFTA-aligned countries like Canada, US, and Mexico have an ungodly 1.8 quintillion cubic feet. That's quintillion with a Q, cubic feet of natural gas. Now, that's enough for those three countries combined to use for the next 50 years. Interestingly, China has some parity here, and they have an expected 1.1 quintillion cubic feet of natural gas. The problem is they don't have the technology to conduct the extraction like the U.S. does, using fracking and getting down into their shale reserves, because the tech just isn't there for them right now. Meanwhile, the U.S. is using natural gas to also drive down our greenhouse gas emissions. Now, unfortunately, natural gas is still a greenhouse gas producer, but it produces half the carbon emissions as coal and only 1/3 of the carbon emission, or 1/3 less than oil. So it's still better. It's not perfect, but it's better than coal, which is what coal and oil, which is what Europe is looking to switch to. I mean, Germany is turning on coal and oil fired plants because they are not going to have natural gas going forward, apparently, from Russia. So speaking of green energy, though, and we take nuclear out of this, which I'm a huge proponent of nuclear, but we'll take nuclear out of this and just go strictly what is the true sense of green energy, which is like the sun and wind power. There are only two countries in the world with the technology, the capital investment base, and the capital investment base to not only build the production of green energy, but also the storage capacity required to harness viable amounts of green energy while also getting enough sun and enough wind to make it worthwhile. Europe, for instance, has a large amount of capital to build out these things. They just don't get as much sun or as much wind as these other two countries. Now, the first country is Australia. Australia gets a ton of sun and wind, and they're starting to harness that very effectively. The second country is, you guessed it, the United States. The United States has enough sun in the American Southwest that by solar alone, we could power the entire country. The American Great Plains may also be the best place in the world for large-scale wind power based on its proximity to population centers. So interestingly, the United States doesn't even need the fossil fuels that it sits on. In fact, we would probably switch to green energy if natural gas wasn't so damn cheap to burn for energy. Like I said, we don't need the fossil fuels, but we keep them in reserve for our military equipment and for emergencies. From an energy standpoint, only Russia comes close to the capabilities of the US, but like China, they rely on Western engineering expertise to get their oil and natural gas to market. Russia doesn't have the tech. Western energy conglomerates like Halliburton and Shell are pulling out of Russia. And only the U.S. has the magic combination of reserves, the capital funding to extract that stuff, the tech to be a global engineer power or energy power, as well as the security to secure those things. Australia has that very similarly. And when I say the U.S. in that regard, I lump in Mexico and Canada. Those three countries, energy-wise, are largely untouchable. And because of that, with the U.S. being the large population base between the three countries, as well as the massive military power, it's going to maintain its status as a massive energy power within the greater, what I call hyperpower of the United States, meaning that it's just one more block it checks in which the United States will remain extraordinarily dominant. And with our good relations with Canada and Mexico, they certainly will be included in that. So from an energy standpoint, once again, the U.S. is in the position to be the best at managing and